The summer air over Brandenburg shimmers with heat as Hauptmann Dieter Volkmann walks toward the fighter sitting on Recklin's concrete apron. It is July 20th, 1944, and the aircraft before him should not exist here. The olive drab paint is scratched and faded from rough handling during transport. Someone has crudely brushed Luftwaffe crosses over the positions where American stars once proclaimed their allegiance. But no amount of paint can disguise what this machine represents. Serial number P51D5NA4413586. North American Aviation's Mustang. The fighter that is destroying the Luftwaffe's defensive system, one sortie at a time. Dieter circles the aircraft slowly, methodically, the way a professional evaluates an opponent, the way prey might study its predator. He is 42 years old, a test pilot for 3 years, a fighter pilot for 4 before that. 37 confirmed victories between 1939 and 1941, back when Luftwaffe pilots held tactical advantages and the war seemed winnable. Those days are gone. Now he evaluates enemy aircraft at this facility north of Berlin, documenting their capabilities, so Luftwaffe pilots might find ways to counter them. 23 different Allied aircraft types have passed through his hands since 1941. Soviet Yak-3s that handled like tractors with wings, but turned surprisingly well at low altitude. British Spitfire Mark V's that maneuvered beautifully, but ran out of fuel after 90 minutes. American P-47 Thunderbolts, massive radial engine fighters that German pilots nicknamed the Jug for their resemblance to milk jugs, powerful in dives, but lacking agility for sustained dogfighting. Each aircraft had clear strengths. Each had exploitable weaknesses. This one is different. The fuselage is narrower than he expected, almost delicate compared to the robust Focke-Wulf 190s he flew in combat. His hand runs along the wing's leading edge, feeling the smoothness of the laminar flow surface that German engineers have heard about but never successfully replicated in production. The aluminum skin feels thin, almost fragile under his palm. American manufacturing philosophy, he thinks. Build it light, build it fast, build 10,000 of them. The Mustang was forced down near Aachen 2 weeks ago, its Packard-built Merlin engine coughing and failing after what the pilot reported as fuel contamination. He belly landed in a field, the aircraft sliding to a halt largely intact. Wehrmacht ground forces secured it before the pilot could destroy it. Within hours, it was being transported eastward, away from the advancing front lines toward Rechlin. Dieter's orders are straightforward. Evaluate the aircraft's performance characteristics. Identify strengths and weaknesses. Determine whether combat reports from the Western Front are accurate or exaggerated. Find something German pilots can exploit. Anything. The reports filtering back from frontline units have been increasingly urgent, increasingly troubling. Luftwaffe pilots encountering a fighter that seems to violate fundamental constraints of aviation engineering. A long-range escort fighter should not be possible according to German aerodynamic theory. The fuel weight required for extended range should make the aircraft too heavy for competitive performance in combat. Yet the Americans are somehow escorting their heavy bomber formations all the way to Berlin and back, and the fighter providing that escort is outperforming Germany's best interceptors in air-to-air combat. Pilots return from missions, those who return with stories that sound like exaggeration born from stress and fear. But the numbers don't lie. Luftwaffe losses are mounting. American bomber streams reach their targets with increasing frequency. The escorts never seem to run low on fuel, never seem to tire, never seem to leave. If the Mustang is truly as capable as reports suggest, the strategic implications are catastrophic. Dieter needs to know the truth. He climbs onto the wing, his boots finding purchase on the non-slip walkway marked near the fuselage. The canopy is already open, slid back on its rails. He lowers himself into the cockpit and immediately notices the difference. The seat position is set higher than in German fighters, providing exceptional visibility. He can see over the nose with ease, can look left and right and behind without craning his neck. The canopy is a bubble design, a single piece of curved plexiglass with no framework interrupting the view. In a Messerschmitt Bf 109, the heavy canopy frame creates significant blind spots, areas where an attacking enemy fighter can hide until too late. Here there are none. 360 degrees of visibility. A pilot could search for threats without the constant head swiveling required in German aircraft. The instrument panel spreads before him, labeled in English. Someone has added small strips of paper with German translations. Manifold pressure, fuel mixture, coolant, temperature, oil pressure. The layout is logical, everything within easy reach. American ergonomics, he notes. They design aircraft for the pilot rather than designing pilots to fit the aircraft. He studies the throttle quadrant on the left side of the cockpit. In German fighters, the throttle is positioned on the right, which has always seemed natural to Dieter. This left-hand placement will require adjustment, but the positioning itself seems intuitive once his hand finds it. Below the throttle mixture control and propeller pitch lever, the Americans use a constant speed propeller automatically adjusting blade angle to maintain optimal RPM. Another example of their philosophy: automate what can be automated, so the pilot can focus on fighting rather than engine management. Behind him, ground crew are moving into position around the aircraft. Oberst Konrad Steinhoff, the facility commander, stands near the wing with engineer Ludwig Hartmann Recklin's chief aeronautical engineer. Both men are watching Dieter with expressions that mix professional interest with something else. Concern, perhaps, or dread. Steinhoff had received the orders from Berlin 3 days ago: evaluate the captured P-51D Mustang, provide complete performance analysis within 72 hours. The Reich Air Ministry needs data for tactical countermeasures. The war is not going well. The invasion of Normandy succeeded despite Luftwaffe opposition. Allied fighters operate over German territory with increasing impunity. The carefully constructed fighter defense system radar stations, ground controllers, regional fighter wings is being systematically dismantled by overwhelming force. Berlin needs hope. Berlin needs to know that German pilots can still win. Berlin needs exploitable weaknesses documented so doctrine can be updated and pilots given fighting chances. Dieter is not certain he will find what Berlin wants. Ludwig approaches the cockpit carrying a clipboard thick with technical documents. The engineer is 38, brilliant, dedicated. He spent 5 years at Messerschmitt before transferring to Rechlin, and he understands aircraft design at levels most pilots never contemplate. Herr Hauptmann, Ludwig says, his voice carrying across the quiet airfield, I have compiled the technical specifications from our examination over the past week. Would you like to review before flight? Yes, Dieter says. Tell me what you have learned. Ludwig consults his notes. The aircraft is designated P-51D-5NA. D indicates the variant. This is the most recent production model with the bubble canopy. 5NA indicates it was built at North American Aviation's California facility. Serial number 4413586 suggests it was manufactured in early 1940. Engine, Packard VI-165-7. This is the American license-built version of the British Rolls-Royce Merlin 1. Liquid-cooled V12 configuration. Displacement, 27 liters. The engine produces 490 horsepower at war emergency power with water methanol injection engaged. The two-stage, two-speed supercharger maintains power output at altitudes where our engines begin to struggle. Dieter processes this. The Daimler-Benz DB605 engine in the BF109G produces 475 horsepower, slightly less than the Mustang's engine. But the Mustang's supercharger is superior. German engines use single-stage superchargers that work well at low altitude, but lose effectiveness above 6,000 meters. The two-stage design compresses air twice, maintaining power at much higher altitudes. Propeller specifications. Hamilton standard 4-blade unit, diameter 11.2 feet, constant speed design with automatic pitch control. The pilot sets desired RPM and the propeller adjusts blade angle automatically to maintain it. Weight. Empty weight 7040 pounds. Maximum takeoff weight with full internal fuel and ammunition 1,100 pounds. With 2 external drop tanks, weight increases to approximately 14,000 pounds. Dieter does the mathematics in his head. The Focke-Wulf 190A8, his primary mount before becoming a test pilot, weighs 755 pounds empty and 10,800 pounds at maximum takeoff. The Mustang is roughly the same size but carries significantly more fuel. That fuel capacity is what enables the extended range that makes escort missions to Berlin possible. Armament. 6 Browning M250 caliber machine guns, 3 mounted in each wing. Each gun carries 400 rounds for a total of 2,400 rounds. Rate of fire approximately 800 rounds per minute per gun, giving combined rate of 4,800 rounds per minute. No cannons. The Americans have chosen volume of fire over hitting power. Dieter considers this. German fighters typically mount cannons 20mm or 30mm weapons that fire explosive shells capable of destroying bombers with a few hits. But cannons fire slowly and carry limited ammunition. The Mustang's 650 caliber guns fire faster and carry more ammunition. In deflection shooting, where you lead a target and create a cone of bullets for it to fly through, the high rate of force fights becomes devastatingly effective. Fuel capacity. Internal tanks hold 269 gallons. With 210-gallon external drop tanks, total capacity reaches 489 gallons. The aircraft cruises at approximately 1.8 gallons per minute at normal cruise power settings, giving endurance of approximately 4.5 hours with drop tanks. 4.5 hours. The BF-109G carries 88 gallons internally and has endurance of perhaps 90 minutes. The FW-190A8 carries 115 gallons and can fly for 2 hours. The Mustang can fly more than twice as long as Germany's best fighters. Ludwig continues, performance specifications from our initial ground examination and American documentation found in the aircraft maximum speed at 4,500 meters altitude, 715 kilometers per hour. Service ceiling, 12,770 meters. Rate of climb at sea level, 16.3 meters per second. Combat radius with drop tanks, 1,210 kilometers. Dieter is silent for several seconds processing these numbers. If accurate, they represent performance superior to every German fighter in Luftwaffe inventory. The FW-190A8 achieves maximum speed of approximately 653 kilometers per hour at optimal altitude. The BF-109G6 reaches 621 kilometers per hour. Both have service ceilings around 11,500 meters. Combat radius for the 109 is approximately 320 kilometers. For the 190, perhaps 400 kilometers with a drop tank. In every category speed-altitude range, the Mustang's claimed performance exceeds German capabilities. Not marginally, substantially. Ludwig, Dieter says quietly, if these specifications are accurate, we have a serious problem. Yes, Herr Hauptmann, that is why Berlin needs your evaluation. They need to know if the claims are real or propaganda. Dieter nods slowly. Then let us find out. He signals to the ground crew. They move to their positions, chocks ready, fire extinguisher position, fuel truck standing by. No one is entirely certain this American engine will start reliably with German maintenance procedures and captured American fuel stockpiled from overrun supply dumps in France. The Merlin is notoriously particular about fuel quality, requiring high-octane gasoline that Germany can no longer produce in sufficient quantities. Dieter follows the startup procedure that has been translated and posted on a card attached to the instrument panel with tape, fuel mixture rich. Throttle cracked open 1 inch. Magnetos both. His thumb finds the starter button on the left side of the panel. He presses it. The engine turns over once, twice, catches. The 4-blade propeller begins to rotate slowly at first, then accelerating into an invisible disc. The Packard Merlin's distinctive sound fills the morning air, a deep, smooth rumble, fundamentally different from the harsher mechanical snarl of a Daimler-Benz DB605. There is a refined quality to the sound, an impression of precision manufacturing and careful tolerances. The British designed this engine in the 1930s as a racing power plant, then adapted it for the Spitfire. The Americans took the design, improved the manufacturing process, and began producing it in quantities that German industry cannot match. Tens of thousands of Merlins have been built in American factories. They power not only the Mustang but also Spitfires and Lancaster bombers. It is perhaps the war's most successful aircraft engine, and it is not German. This troubles Dieter more than he cares to admit. He has been raised in a culture that celebrates German technical superiority. The Reich's propaganda apparatus has spent years cultivating the image of German engineering as the world's finest. The early victories of 1940 and 1941 seem to confirm this narrative. German tanks overran Poland and France. The Luftwaffe swept aside the Polish Air Force and severely damaged the French. Even the vaunted RAF was fought to a standstill over Britain. But 1944 tells a different story. The Luftwaffe is losing pilots faster than they can be trained. Aircraft production is actually increasing. Factories churn out Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs in record numbers. Yet German fighters are being destroyed faster than they can be replaced. Not because of manufacturing capacity, but because of a quality gap in both machines and pilots. American pilots arrive over Germany with 200 to 300 hours of flight training. German pilots now receive 30 to 50 hours before being thrust into combat. The Americans fly aircraft that seem to violate supposed laws of aeronautical engineering. The Germans fly refined versions of designs from 1939, incremental improvements on obsolescent concepts. Dieter begins his taxi, steering the Mustang toward Recklin's main runway. The tail wheel is steerable, linked to the rudder pedals, providing precise ground control. Visibility over the nose is adequate, better than in the BF-109, with its narrow-track landing gear and nose-high ground attitude, though not quite as good as the FW-190's wide-stance configuration. He performs pre-takeoff checks, reading from the translated checklist, Flight controls free and correct. He moves the stick through its full range of motion, watching the ailerons and elevator respond outside the cockpit. Trim tabs set for takeoff. Elevator trim slightly nose up. Fuel selector, main tank selected. Mixture rich. Propeller full forward, pitch for maximum thrust. Flaps up. The Americans don't use flaps for normal takeoff runs, relying instead on the wing's inherent lift characteristics. The tower clears him for departure. Dieter turns onto the runway, aligns the nose with the center line, and takes a breath. His hand rests on the throttle. Behind him, Ludwig and Oberst Steinhoff watch from the edge of the concrete. Ground crew stand ready. Everyone is waiting to see if the claims are true. Only one way to find out. Dieter advances the throttle smoothly forward. The acceleration is immediate and visceral, not the building surge of a Fokker 190 wrestling its own weight, but a linear release as if cables have been cut. 1,790 pounds of thrust against 12,100 pounds of aircraft, and the Mustang simply goes. The tail comes up quickly at 120 kilometers per hour, improving visibility dramatically. The runway centerline is clearly visible ahead. Airspeed climbs 150 kilometers per hour, 180, 200, 220. At 220 kilometers per hour, Dieter eases back on the stick. The Mustang lifts cleanly into the air. No hesitation, no struggling, just smooth, authoritative flight. The runway falls away beneath him. Math real-time moment number 1. Takeoff roll 400 meters measured from brake release to wheels up. FW 190 A8 standard 600 meters. BF 109 G6 standard 550 meters. Advantage 200 meters, a 33% reduction in required runway length. Tactical implications. The Mustang can operate from shorter runways, from damaged runways, from forward airstrips that German fighters cannot use. American logistics advantage increases. Dieter keys the radio. Reckland Tower, Volkmann, airborne. Time 14:37 hours. Gear coming up. His right hand finds the landing gear lever and moves it to the UP position. Hydraulics whine. The main wheels retract into the wings with a solid mechanical thunk. The tail wheel folds into its bay. The gear doors close with precision that speaks to American manufacturing quality. And then the Mustang transforms. Drag disappears. The aircraft accelerates as if it has been released from restraints. There is no laboring against wind resistance, no sense of the airframe struggling to convert power into speed. The Merlin's note doesn't change still, that smooth, refined roar, but the airspeed indicator needle climbs with unsettling rapidity. 250 kilometers per hour. 300. 301. He is barely at 500 meters altitude, still climbing out, and already the Mustang is moving faster than a Bf 109G at maximum cruise power. Ludwig, Dieter says into the radio, keeping his voice controlled professional, but unable to suppress a note of surprise. I am passing 350 kilometers per hour in initial climb. Standard climb power. The aircraft accelerates as if, he pauses, searching for words, as if drag does not exist. From the ground, Ludwig's voice crackles back. Understood, Herr Hauptmann. That is the laminar flow wing. The NACA 66 series airfoil maintains smooth airflow over a greater percentage of the surface, reducing drag by 30 to 40% compared to conventional wings. Dieter knows this in theory. German engineers have studied laminar flow design since the late 1930s, but achieving it in practice requires manufacturing tolerances of 0.002 inches across the entire wing surface. Any imperfection, any rivet head protruding above the skin, any paint texture, roughness, disrupts the laminar flow and negates the benefits. American factories achieve these tolerances reliably. German factories cannot not at mass production scale. He continues climbing. 1,000 meters. 1,500. 2,000. The Mustang climbs with steady, predictable performance. Dieter scans the instrument panel checking systems. Manifold pressure 46 inches of mercury. Standard climb power. Fuel flow 170 liters per hour. Oil pressure 70 pounds per square inch, steady in the green. Coolant temperature 100 degrees Celsius, normal operating range. RPM 3000 maintained automatically by the constant speed propeller. Every needle in the green. Every system nominal. The engine runs with smoothness that seems unnatural to a pilot accustomed to German fighters, where engines vibrate, where power delivery is uneven, where constant monitoring is required. At 3,000 meters, Dieter levels off and begins systematic evaluation. This is his job. This is what he does. 23 aircraft types before this one, each evaluated with the same methodical approach. Start gentle. Progress to aggressive. Find the limits. Document everything. Gentle turns to the left. 10 degrees of bank. 20, 30. The ailerons respond with surprising lightness. Control forces are far lower than in German fighters, where heavy stick forces prevent pilots from overstressing airframes during combat maneuvers. The Mustang's philosophy is different. Light controls at all speeds, but with progressively increasing resistance as velocity builds. He reverses the bank. Right turn 30 degrees, the Mustang transitions smoothly immediately. Coordination between aileron and rudder feels natural, intuitive. No adverse yaw, no need for heavy rudder inputs to maintain coordinated flight. Dieter pulls back on the stick. The nose rises smoothly. 5 degrees above horizon, 10, 15. Elevator response is progressive, predictable. No tendency toward pitch up or pitch down sensitivity. The aircraft wants to fly straight and level when left alone. This is significant. In a Bf-109, the pilot must constantly manage the aircraft. Small rudder inputs counter propeller torque. Small aileron corrections maintain wings a level flight. Continuous elevator trim adjustments compensate for changing fuel weight and center of gravity. The 109 demands attention every moment. The Mustang does not. Dieter takes his hands off the stick. Both hands attest he would never attempt in a 109 without expecting immediate consequences. The Mustang continues straight and level. 10 seconds, 20, 30. It flies itself, requiring only minor rudder pressure to maintain heading. Ludwig, he reports, keeping his tone analytical, factual. Stability exceptional. Aircraft requires minimal pilot input for sustained flight. Control harmony excellent. This is designed for long-duration missions where pilot fatigue becomes a factor. Understood, Ludwig replies. American doctrine emphasizes formation flying and extended escort missions. German training focuses on individual combat and short intercepts. Different requirements produce different designs. Dieter already understood this conceptually, but sitting in an American fighter experiencing the design philosophy directly makes the contrast visceral. Germany builds aircraft for expert pilots who can manage complex systems during intense combat. America builds aircraft so average pilots can focus on tactics rather than aircraft management. In peacetime, the German approach produces superior individual pilots. In total war, when training time shrinks from 300 hours to 50, when replacement pilots arrive barely capable of landing safely, the American approach produces more pilots who survive long enough to become competent. He advances throttle and climbs again. 4,000 meters, 4,500, 5,000. The Merlin maintains smooth power output without the gasping struggle characteristic of German engines at altitude. The two-stage supercharger, a Rolls-Royce innovation perfected in American manufacturing, compresses thin air and feeds it to cylinders at near sea-level density. At 5,000 meters, Dieter performs a stall test. Standard procedure for evaluating any aircraft's low-speed handling characteristics. Power to idle. Airspeed bleeds off. 400 kilometers per hour. 350, 300, 250, 200. At 180 kilometers per hour, the Mustang begins to buffet, gentle shaking through the airframe, warning that the wing approaches its critical angle of attack. Dieter pulls back further, forcing the nose up, demanding more lift than the wing can provide. At 165 kilometers per hour, the stall breaks. The nose drops smoothly, predictably. No wing drop, no snap roll, no tendency to enter a spin. The aircraft simply transitions from flight to descent with the docility of a training plane. Dieter releases back pressure, adds power. The Mustang recovers immediately, smoothly, asking nothing from the pilot except basic competence. Stall speed, 165 km/h. Stall characteristics, benign. Spin tendency, none observed. Recovery, immediate and straightforward. A German pilot encountering this aircraft in slow-speed combat will find no weakness to exploit. The Mustang does not punish mistakes. It does not snap roll when mishandled. It simply flies, forgiving pilot errors that would kill a man in a Bf-109. Dieter makes notes on the knee board strapped to his thigh. Detailed observations. Precise measurements. This is what Berlin needs. This is what Luftwaffe pilots need. Hard data, not speculation. Time aloft, 18 minutes. Fuel remaining, 251 gallons. All systems nominal. Now for the evaluation that matters most. The speed run. But nothing prepared Dieter for what happened when he pushed the throttle to maximum power and asked the Mustang to show him what it could truly do. He climbs back to 4,500 meters. This altitude represents the middle of the tactical envelope where most fighter combat occurs over Germany. High enough for energy advantage and dogfighting, low enough for human consciousness, without pressurization, optimal for engine performance. Dieter levels precisely at 4,500 meters. Checks fuel, 231 gallons. Checks engine instruments, all green. Checks airspace clear. I'm 1449 hours. 24 minutes since takeoff. His hand rests on the throttle. In a moment, he will know if the claims are true. If the Mustang can truly reach 715 kilometers per hour, as American documentation indicates. If it can truly exceed German fighters by such a substantial margin. He advances the throttle smoothly forward to maximum continuous power. Not war emergency, not yet. Maximum continuous represents the power setting sustainable indefinitely without engine damage. In the Packard Merlin V1657, this means 61 inches of manifold pressure and 3,000 RPM. The Merlin responds with deeper, more authoritative roar. The four-blade propeller bites air, converting 380 horsepower into thrust. The Mustang accelerates, 350 kilometers per hour, 375, 376. The acceleration is linear, relentless. No flat spots where the engine struggles. No drag barriers where the airframe resists. The Mustang simply goes faster, the airspeed indicator, needle climbing with mechanical inevitability. 425 kilometers per hour. This matches maximum speed of many German fighters. 450. Still accelerating. Dieter keys the radio. His voice is controlled, professional, but carries an edge. Ludwig, I am at 4,500 meters maximum continuous power. Speed is 450 kilometers per hour and increasing. Brief pause, then Ludwig's voice through static. Understood, Herr Hauptmann. For reference, FW190A8 maximum speed at that altitude is approximately 575 kilometers per hour. BF109 G6 achieves approximately 580. Dieter knows these numbers intimately. What Ludwig is saying without stating directly, you should be approaching maximum velocity now. But the Mustang is nowhere near maximum velocity. 475 kilometers per hour, 500, 501, 502. The airspeed indicator passes the maximum speed of the Bf-109 G6, the Messerschmitt that forms the backbone of Luftwaffe fighter wings, the aircraft that has fought from Poland to the English Channel to the gates of Moscow. The Mustang surpasses it in level flight at standard power setting, 575 kilometers per hour. Dieter's Focke-Wulf 190A8, one of Germany's finest interceptors, has just been equaled. And the Mustang continues accelerating. 600, 601, 602. Math real-time moment number 2. Speed progression time. 4049, 00 hours, 400 km run. Time, 49, 30 hours, 500 km on a BF-109 G6. Maximum speed, 621 km/h exceeded time, 450, 00 hours. 600 km F-190, A8 maximum speed, 653 km exceeded the time, 450, 25 hours, 650 km/h still accelerating. No performance plateau, time 50, 15 hours, 700 km, time 1451 15 hours, 715 km/h 400 mph. Speed stabilizes total acceleration, time to maximum velocity, 2 minutes 15 seconds. Dieter maintains 715 kilometers per hour for 30 seconds, verifying the reading is stable and accurate. The aircraft is smooth controlled. No buffeting, no flutter, no structural complaints. The Mustang is not struggling. It has simply reached the speed where drag and thrust achieve equilibrium at this power setting. He could go faster with war emergency power. He knows this. He can feel it. But this is enough. This is more than enough. He reduces power slightly to 700 km for fuel conservation and keys the radio. His voice remains controlled, but the words carry weight. Ludwig, maximum speed verified at 4,500 meters altitude, 715 kilometers per hour. I repeat, 715. American claims are accurate. Silence on the radio, not static silence. The kind that follows information no one wants confirmed. Finally, Ludwig's voice returns quieter than before. Hauptmann, that is 62 kilometers per hour faster than the FW190A8, 94 kilometers per hour faster than the BF109 G6. Correct, Dieter says simply. The tactical implications require no explanation. Every Luftwaffe pilot understands what speed advantage means. A German pilot cannot catch a fleeing Mustang. If the American chooses to disengage, to turn away and run for safety, German aircraft lack the velocity to close distance. The engagement ends on American terms. A German pilot cannot escape a pursuing Mustang. If the American chooses to attack, no German fighter can build sufficient speed advantage to break away. The engagement continues until the Mustang pilot decides otherwise or until the German aircraft is destroyed. A German pilot cannot dictate terms of engagement. The faster aircraft controls when combat begins and when it ends. Initiative belongs entirely to the American. The German reacts. For 4 years, Luftwaffe pilots held speed advantages over most Allied fighters. The F-190 was faster than the Spitfire Mark V. The Bf-109F exceeded early P-40 variants. Speed meant control. Speed meant choosing when to fight and when to flee. Speed meant survival. That advantage no longer exists. Dieter maintains 700 km/h and processes this information with the clinical detachment of a test pilot. His function is gathering data, analyzing performance, identifying strengths and weaknesses. Emotion has no place in professional assessment. But he is also a fighter pilot with 37 victories and 4 years of combat experience. That experience speaks with cold clarity. The Luftwaffe is fighting an aircraft it cannot match in the most fundamental metric of air combat. Ludwig, he says, voice steady and professional. Speed evaluation complete. Proceeding to high-altitude performance test. Climbing to 7,000 meters. Understood, Herr Hauptmann. Be advised you have been airborne 31 minutes. Current fuel state. Dieter scans the gauge. 210 gallons remaining. No concerns. He advances throttle and pulls back on the stick. The Mustang's nose rises smoothly, and the aircraft begins climbing toward the altitude where American bomber formations operate, where the next phase of evaluation will occur, where Dieter will discover whether the speed advantage is the Mustang's only superiority or merely the first of several. Speed was Revelation 1. Altitude would be Revelation 2 and far worse. At 6,000 meters, Dieter Volkmann feels the difference. Not in the Mustang. The Mustang feels exactly as it did at 3,000 meters, smooth, responsive, powerful. Controls remain crisp. Engine maintains steady roar. If not for the altimeter reading 6,000 meters and outside air temperature showing minus 23 degrees Celsius, a pilot might not realize he had climbed at all. But Dieter knows what should be happening at this altitude. He has flown German fighters here hundreds of times. At 6,000 meters, a Bf-109 G6 begins to labor. The Daimler-Benz DB605 engine, equipped with only single-stage supercharger, struggles to compress thinning air. Power output drops. Manifold pressure falls. The pilot must advance throttle further to maintain speed, and still the aircraft feels sluggish compared to low-altitude performance. At 6,000 meters, a Focke-Wulf 190A8 experiences similar degradation. The BMW 801D2 radial engine, powerful and brutal at sea level, becomes temperamental and weak in cold oxygen-poor air above 500 meters. Pilots joke that the FW110 is a lion below 5,000 meters and a house cat above 7,000. The Mustang is neither laboring nor struggling. Dieter continues climbing. 7,000 meters. This altitude is where American B-17 and B-24 bombers conduct raids over Germany. The heavy bombers cruise between 7,000 and 8,000 meters, high enough to reduce German flak effectiveness, high enough that oxygen deprivation affects Luftwaffe pilots, whose equipment is often inadequate, high enough that German fighters arrive gasping and exhausted after long climbs from airfields below. Dieter levels at 7,000 meters and performs the same handling evaluation he conducted at 3,000 meters. Banks left, banks right, pulls up, pushes down, tests stall characteristics and control response. Everything remains effective. Ailerons light and responsive. Elevator smooth and progressive. Rudder precise. He increases power and accelerates. The Mustang reaches 680 kilometers per hour at 7,000 meters slower than at 400 or 500 meters due to thinner air, providing less thrust from the propeller, but still faster than a Bf-109 G6 can achieve at its optimal altitude. Ludwig, Dieter reports, keeping his voice analytical. At 7,000 meters, controls remain fully effective. Power output appears unchanged from lower altitude. The two-stage supercharger is maintaining manifold pressure. Hauptmann, Ludwig responds, and there is something in the engineer's voice, not quite disbelief, but close to it. That altitude represents the operational ceiling for most effective combat in our fighters. You report no performance degradation. Correct. The aircraft is comfortable here. If I did not see the altimeter, I would estimate I was at 4,000 meters based on how it feels. Brief pause. Then Ludwig again. Understood. Please continue evaluation. Dieter advances throttle and climbs. 8,000 meters. Now he is above the bomber streams. He looks down purely theoretical exercise, as there are no American bombers over Brandenburg today, and constructs the tactical picture from the American perspective. Heavy bombers at 7,000, 8,000 meters, arrayed in combat box formations, each mounting 10 to 12 50 caliber machine guns. Combined defensive firepower of 50 to 100 aircraft makes attacking through the formation a gauntlet of lead. Fighter escorts at 9,000, 10,000 meters at above and behind bombers, waiting with altitude advantage and energy advantage. German interceptors climbing from airfields below, fighting for altitude engines, straining pilots breathing hard through oxygen masks that freeze and malfunction in sub-zero temperatures. The Luftwaffe fighters arrive at 7,000 meters after 15 to 20-minute climbs. They must attack through bomber formations, through combined defensive fire of hundreds of machine guns, while Mustang escorts dive from above, from positions of total energy dominance from the altitude where they have been cruising comfortably for the past hour. 9,000 meters. The Mustang climbs through 9,000 meters without complaint. Dieter checks engine instruments, hoping to see some indication of stress, some sign the aircraft approaches operational limits. Manifold pressure 52 inches. Down from 61 at maximum continuous but still producing over 1,200 horsepower. Oil temperature, normal range. Coolant temperature, normal range. Cylinder head temperature, normal range. Everything nominal. Everything green. As if altitude means nothing. Math real-time moment number 3. Altitude superiority analysis. BF 109 G6 specifications. Service ceiling, 11, 550 meters theoretical maximum aircraft laboring. MA effective combat ceiling, 9,000 meters where performance remains adequate for fighting. Climb rate at 9,000 meters, approximately 1 meter per second. FW 190 ABS 08 specifications. Service ceiling, 11, 410 meters theoretical maximum barely functional. Effective combat ceiling, 8,000 meters where performance remains competitive. Climb rate at 8,000 meters, approximately 1.5 meters per second. P-51D, Mustang specifications. Service ceiling, 12, 7 to 70 meters theoretical maximum per documentation. Effective combat. Ceiling a known aircraft comfortable and fully functional at 9,000 meters. Current climb rate at 9,000 meters or 4 meters per second. At 9,000 meters, Dieter estimates the BF 109 G6 would be climbing at perhaps 1 meter per second maximum. Engine laboring, controls mushy. Pilot acutely aware of operating near aircraft limits, focused more on maintaining consciousness than engaging enemies. The Mustang is climbing at 4 meters per second. 4. Dieter keys the radio. He can hear the edge in his own voice now, professional facade cracking slightly under weight of what he is discovering. Ludwig, I am at 9,000 meters. Aircraft fully controllable. Climbing at 4 meters per second. All systems nominal. I estimate I could reach 11,000 or 12,000 meters before encountering any performance limitation. The radio crackles, static. Then Ludwig's voice careful and measured. Hauptmann, please verify your altitude reading. 9,000 meters. Affirmative, altimeter reads 9,000 meters. Outside air temperature minus 48 Celsius. I am breathing supplemental oxygen. Aircraft performance is, where Dieter pauses searching for accurate description. Extraordinary is the only word. Longer silence this time. Then Ludwig quieter, Herr Hauptmann, you understand what this means. Dieter understands. He understands completely. Before responding, he continues to 10,000 meters. 10,000 meters, 808 feet in American measurement. This is altitude where German fighters cease to be fighters and become barely controllable machines whose pilots focus on staying conscious rather than fighting. At 10,000 meters, 2 kilometers higher than most Luftwaffe pilots will ever fly in combat, Dieter expects the Mustang to be struggling. It is not struggling. Climb rate 4 meters per second unchanged from 9,000 meters. He performs test turn, half expecting sluggish response. Mushy controls the aircraft begging to descend. The Mustang banks crisply. Ailerons responsive. Elevator smooth. As if altitude means nothing to this machine. Dieter's hands are shaking slightly. Not from cold, not from oxygen deprivation. From the realization of what this means operationally, strategically for every German pilot flying intercept missions against American bomber streams. Ludwig, his voice cracks slightly. He clears throat. Professional. Stay professional. I am at 10,000 meters, aircraft fully controllable, climbing at 4 meters per second. I estimate I could reach 11,000, possibly 12,000 meters before encountering performance degradation. Long pause. Then Ludwig's voice barely above whisper, Mein Gott. Hauptmann, our fighters ceased to be effective combat aircraft at 9,000 meters. You are describing an aircraft that begins its optimal performance envelope where ours end. Correct, Dieter says simply. And in that moment, sighting in a captured American fighter at altitude, where no German pilot could challenge him, where the air is so thin that human lungs cannot extract sufficient oxygen, even with supplemental breathing apparatus, where temperatures would kill an unprotected man in minutes, Dieter Volkmann understands why the Luftwaffe is losing the air war. It is not pilot skill. German pilots are well-trained, experienced, brave. It is not tactics. Luftwaffe tactical doctrine is sound, developed through years of combat. It is not numbers alone. Germany produces fighters in substantial quantities, 200 Bf-109s per month by mid-1944. It is this: the Americans are fighting in their element while Germans struggle in an environment where their aircraft barely function. Ludwig, Dieter says, and now his voice carries weight of strategic truth that cannot be denied. I need you to understand what I am seeing. The P-51D operates comfortably between 9,000 and 10,000 meters. Our fighters struggle above 7,000. The Americans are engaging us in their element, not ours. He pauses, organizing thoughts, then continues. Every intercept mission sends our pilots into combat at altitude where the enemy has absolute advantage. We climb for 20 minutes, burning fuel, exhausting pilots, stressing engines. We arrive at bomber altitude with marginal performance capability. Meanwhile, Mustang escorts crews at 9,000 to 10,000 meters with full power, available fresh pilots, abundant fuel. They dive on us from above with total energy advantage. We cannot climb to meet them. We cannot escape them. We cannot outrun them. Another pause. Then the conclusion. This is not a tactical problem we can solve with better doctrine or training. This is systemic failure. We are asking our pilots to fight with inferior tools in an environment optimized for the enemy. Silence on the radio. 30 seconds. 45. Finally, Ludwig responds, his voice heavy. I will include this analysis in my engineering report, Herr Hauptmann, but I suspect Berlin already knows. The question is whether they will acknowledge it. Dieter does not respond. There is nothing to say. The data speaks for itself. He checks fuel state: 165 gallons remaining. Time aloft: 41 minutes. One test remains the most dangerous test, the one that has killed German test pilots. But before the dive test, Dieter needs Ludwig to understand one more piece of the puzzle. Ludwig, he says, do we have transcripts from frontline intercepts? Pilot communications from the Western Front regarding Mustang encounters. Brief pause. Ja, Hauptmann, intelligence provides selected communications for our analysis. Why do you ask? Read me the most recent Mustang encounter report. Verbatim. Sound of papers rustling through the radio speaker. Then Ludwig's voice reading from a document. Intercepted transmission July 15, 1944, 15:20 hours, vicinity of Kassel. Oberleutnant Steiner, Jagdgeschwader 3. They're everywhere above us, behind us, on both sides. We climb, they dive on us. We dive to escape, they follow us down. We turn to engage, they're already in position. Schmidt is gone. Muller is gone. I'm breaking off, returning to base. Fuel critical. They are still following us. No, wait, they're turning back. They're just leaving. As if we're not worth the ammunition. Ludwig pauses, then adds quietly, that was 5 days ago. Steiner made it back to base with 11 liters of fuel remaining. His wingman did not. Ran out of fuel 40 kilometers from the airfield and crashed, attempting emergency landing. Dieter processes this. The Mustang pilot had not shot down the second aircraft, had simply chased it until it ran out of fuel and fell from the sky. No ammunition expended, no risk taken. Just patient pursuit until physics and fuel exhaustion accomplished what guns might have. This is what total performance superiority enables. The luxury of choosing how to kill your opponent. Thank you, Ludwig, Dieter says. That confirms what this evaluation is revealing. Proceeding to final test. Understood, Hauptmann. Be careful. The high-speed dive has killed 2 of our pilots in the past month. I remember, Dieter says. He does remember. Oberst Muller died testing compressibility characteristics in a captured Spitfire. Hauptmann Dietrich entered an unrecoverable spin in a P-47 Thunderbolt. Both were experienced test pilots. Both understood the risks. Both died because they encountered aerodynamic phenomena that made their aircraft uncontrollable. Every fighter has maximum velocity beyond which airflow becomes transonic, where shock waves form and controls lock. In the BF-109, that limit is approximately 750 kilometers per hour. Exceeded, and the aircraft enters compressibility, an aerodynamic condition where the pilot loses all control authority. The aircraft tumbles toward Earth while the pilot pulls desperately on a stick that no longer responds to input. Training doctrine is explicit. Never exceed 700 kilometers per hour in a dive. But Dieter must know if the Mustang suffers the same limitation. If there is any weakness, any scenario where a German pilot might gain advantage over this superior aircraft, he descends to 8,000 meters for the test. Sufficient altitude to recover if something goes wrong. Insufficient altitude to survive if recovery is impossible. But that is the nature of test flying. Acceptable risk in service of necessary knowledge. Dieter settles himself in the seat, scans instruments one final time. Everything nominal. Engine smooth, fuel adequate, controls responsive. He advances throttle slightly, adding power to a dive is counterintuitive, but necessary for this test, and pushes the stick forward. The Mustang's nose drops below a horizon. 5 degrees, 10, 15. Earth appears in the windscreen green Brandenburg farmland crosshatched with roads and small villages. It begins growing larger as altitude decreases and velocity builds. Airspeed 500 kilometers per hour. Dieter steepens the dive. 20 degrees nose down. 30, 550 kilometers per hour. 600. This is the speed where BF-109 pilots begin feeling controls stiffen, where first warnings of compressibility appear. Dieter's hands on the stick remain light, feeling for any indication of control problems. The Mustang dives smoothly, stable tracking, straight down its flight path. 650 kilometers per hour. This is the speed where German fighters become dangerous to their own pilots, where the margin between controlled flight and uncontrolled tumble becomes razor thin. Dieter steepens the dive further. 45 degrees nose down. The Earth fills the windscreen now. Altitude decreasing rapidly, 7,500 meters. 7,000, 6,500, 700 kilometers per hour. This is the absolute limit in German fighters. The speed beyond which recovery becomes uncertain and survival depends on luck. The Mustang continues diving stable and controlled. 750 kilometers per hour. Dieter feels pressure on the stick increasing, aerodynamic forces resisting his inputs. But the controls still respond. Ailerons still function. Elevator still moves. The aircraft is not fighting him. It is simply providing feedback, tactile information about airspeed and loading. 800 kilometers per hour. Math real-time moment number 4. Dive progression. Altitude at dive initiation, 8,000 meters. Time, 15:04:00 hours. 500 km, 7,500 altitude. Time, 15:04, 15 hours. 600 km, 7,000 BF-109 caution zone begins. Time, 15:04, 2080 hours. 700 km, 6 to 500 BF-109 absolute limit reached. Time, 15:04, 38 hours. 750 km, 6,000 BF-109 control. Lockup begins. Time, 15:04, 47 hours. 800 km, 5,500 still responsive, no compressibility. Time, 15:04, 55 hours. 850 km, 5,000, 528 MP. Ailerons, heavy but functional. At 850 kilometers per hour, 528 miles per hour. In American measurement, the Mustang is diving at speeds where German fighters would be tumbling uncontrollably toward Earth, where pilots would be screaming into radios for help that cannot come, where death would be seconds away. The Mustang's ailerons are heavy but still functional. Elevator requires firm pressure but still responds. Rudder remains effective. No buffeting, no flutter, no structural complaints. The aircraft is simply flying very fast in a very steep dive, and it is doing so with control authority intact. Dieter pulls back firmly on the stick. Recovery initiation. This is the critical moment. If controls are locked, if compressibility has set in, he will not be able to pull out. Will impact Earth at 850 kilometers per hour and cease to exist. The stick moves aft. Heavy resistance, but it moves. The nose begins to rise. Slowly, grudgingly, but rising. G-forces build as flight path curves from steep dive toward level flight. 2 Gs, 3, 4. Dieter's vision grays at the edges as blood drains from his brain toward his feet. He tenses leg and abdominal muscles, forcing blood back to his head. Fighter pilot technique learned in 1939, practiced 10,000 times since. 5 Gs, the Mustang is pulling out. Altitude 4,000 meters. Airspeed bleeding off rapidly as velocity converts to altitude. 800 kilometers, 750, 700. The dive flattens, transitions to level flight. Then into a climb as excess speed converts to altitude gain. At 5,000 meters altitude and 600 kilometers per hour airspeed, Dieter levels off. His hands are trembling slightly. Adrenaline. Not fear, he has been too busy flying to feel fear, but physiological response to high G loading and intense concentration. The Mustang is undamaged. Systems nominal. No structural complaints, no warning lights. The aircraft has just dived to 850 km and recovered cleanly, and it acts as if this is routine operation. Ludwig, Dieter says, and his voice is not quite steady. He clears his throat and tries again. High-speed dive test complete. Achieved 850 kilometers per hour in controlled dive from 8,000 meters. Controls remained effective throughout. Recovery normal at 4,000 meters. No compressibility effects observed. Silence. Then Ludwig's voice shocked. Hauptmann, did you say 850 kilometers per hour? Affirmative, 850. The aircraft remained controllable. Heavy control forces, but responsive. No lockup, no flutter, clean recovery. More silence. Then, Herr Hauptmann, that is speeds where our fighters become unrecoverable. You are saying the Mustang has no such limitation. Not at 850 kilometers per hour. I could not test higher without endangering the aircraft, but at 850 it was firmly under control. Dieter does not need to explain the tactical implication. Ludwig understands. Every Luftwaffe pilot understands. A German pilot attempting to escape a Mustang by diving will not escape. The Mustang can follow him down, remain controlled at speeds where German fighters become uncontrollable, and still have power and control authority to climb back up afterward when the German pilot crashes or pulls out at lower altitude with his speed advantage gone. There is no safe escape vector. Not speed, not altitude, not diving. The only escape is if the Mustang pilot chooses to let you go. And why would he when he holds every advantage? Ludwig, Dieter continues, voice regaining professional steadiness. I am descending for landing. Please have Oberst Steinhoff standing by. We need to discuss findings before I write the formal report. Understood, Herr Hauptmann. Cleared to land. Wind is calm. Runway 36 available. Dieter reduces power and begins descent toward Rechlin. He has been airborne 44 minutes. 44 minutes that have fundamentally altered his understanding of the air war. At 2,000 meters, he performs pre-landing checks, fuel 155 gallons remaining, more than half of internal capacity still available. Landing gear down and locked. 3 green lights confirm. Flaps extended to landing configuration. Mixture rich for landing. Propeller full forward for maximum control authority on approach. The Mustang descends smoothly, speed reducing to 250 km/h on final approach. The aircraft is stable, predictable. The bubble canopy provides exceptional visibility of the runway ahead and the ground below. Dieter crosses the runway threshold at 180 km/h. Power to idle. Gentle back pressure on the stick. The main wheels kiss concrete with barely perceptible impact. Perfect landing, though Dieter takes no pride in it. The Mustang's forgiving handling characteristics make landing almost trivially easy. He applies brakes gently. The aircraft rolls straight with no tendency to ground loop or weather vane. Steerable tailwheel provides precise directional control. At 400 meters down the runway, the same distance required for takeoff, he turns off onto the taxiway. Time, 15 to 24 hours. Flight duration, 47 minutes exactly. Dieter taxis back to the dispersal area where ground crew and officers wait. He can see Oberst Steinhoff and Ludwig standing together near the parking area. Their body language is tense. They know what he has discovered. They have heard his radio reports. Now they wait for confirmation, for formal assessment, for the words that will go into official documentation and be sent to Berlin. Words that will confirm what they already suspect but have not wanted to believe. Dieter shuts down the Packard Merlin. The 4-blade propeller windmills to a stop. The engine ticks as metal cools. He sits in the cockpit for 10 seconds, organizing thoughts, preparing to deliver his assessment. Then he opens the canopy, removes his leather flying helmet, and climbs out of the aircraft that has just taught him more about modern air warfare than 4 years of combat. Steinhoff and Ludwig approach as Dieter's boots touch concrete. The Oberst's face is carefully neutral, the expression of a professional officer preparing to receive bad news. Ludwig looks pale, almost ill. Herr Hauptmann, Steinhoff says formally, your initial assessment. Dieter takes a breath. Professional, factual, unemotional. Oberst, every performance claim in American documentation is accurate or understated. Maximum speed 715 kilometers per hour verified. Service ceiling, they reach a 10,000 meters with aircraft still climbing strongly. High-speed dive controlled flight to 850 kilometers per hour with a clean recovery. Fuel consumption after 47 minutes of aggressive flight testing, including maximum power runs and combat maneuvers, I have consumed only 114 of 269 gallons internal fuel. He pauses, then delivers the conclusion that matters. The P-51D Mustang is superior to the Focke-Wulf 190A8 in maximum speed, service, ceiling range, and dive performance. It is superior to the Messerschmitt Bf 109 G6 in all the same categories. The American aircraft holds advantage in every performance metric relevant to air superiority combat. Steinhoff's expression does not change. He knew. He has known since the first radio reports. But hearing it stated clearly officially makes it real. Weaknesses, the Oberst asks. Exploitable vulnerabilities. None identified in fighter versus fighter combat, Dieter says. The Bf 109 may retain slight advantage in sustained turn radius at low altitude due to lighter wing loading. The F-190 rolls faster at speeds below 400 kilometers per hour. But these are marginal advantages that the Mustang pilot can negate by refusing to engage in low-speed turning combat. He can always climb away, dive away, or simply run away. We cannot stop him. Ludwig speaks for the first time, his voice quiet. And the strategic implications, Dieter meets the engineer's eyes. The Americans can escort bombers to any target in Germany with fighters that arrive fresh while ours arrive exhausted. They fight at altitudes where they dominate and we struggle. They control every engagement parameter. Our pilots cannot choose when to fight, cannot dictate tactics, cannot escape when necessary. He pauses, then adds the truth that no one wants to hear. We are asking Luftwaffe pilots to fight with obsolescent aircraft against a technologically superior opponent in an environment optimized for enemy advantage. This is not a problem we can solve with better training or tactics. This is systemic. Silence. Steinhoff and Ludwig exchange glances. Finally, the Oberst nods slowly. Prepare your detailed report, Hauptmann. Berlin wants it within 48 hours. Be thorough, be honest. They need to know what we face. Jawohl, Herr Oberst. Steinhoff turns and walks toward the facility headquarters, shoulders slightly slumped, the bearing of a man carrying heavy knowledge. Ludwig remains. He looks at the Mustang sitting quietly on the concrete with its crude Luftwaffe crosses painted over American stars. We cannot build this, the engineer says quietly. Even if we copied every detail perfectly, we could not build it. The laminar flow wing requires manufacturing tolerances we cannot achieve at production scale. The engine requires high-octane fuels we cannot synthesize in adequate quantities. The range requires fuel capacity that makes the aircraft too heavy for our engines to power effectively. He pauses, then continues, and even if we could build it, we lack fuel to fly it, time to produce it in adequate numbers, and pilots trained sufficiently to exploit its capabilities. The Americans have not just built a better fighter, they have built a system design, production, logistics, training that we cannot match. Dieter says nothing. Ludwig has just articulated what the test flight proved. The Mustang is not simply a superior aircraft. It is evidence of superior industrial capacity, superior resource availability, superior strategic planning. Come, Ludwig says. We have reports to write. Berlin is waiting. They walk together toward the engineering building, leaving the Mustang sitting alone on the apron under the July sun. An enemy aircraft on German soil. A messenger carrying news that no one wants to receive, but everyone must hear. In 47 minutes, Dieter Folkmann learned why Germany is losing the air war. In the next 48 hours, he must write those lessons down in words that Berlin cannot ignore. Whether Berlin will accept those lessons is another question entirely. Dieter had documented the Mustang's superiority in every category, but one question remained: could German industry produce an answer? The Me-262 jet was about to arrive at Rechlin, and with it, Germany's last hope. Over the next 3 days, Dieter Folkmann, Ludwig Hartmann, and a team of engineers compile the most comprehensive evaluation report ever produced at Rechlin. The document is methodical, organized, and devastating. Section 1 Performance Summary, P-51D. Mustang specifications verified through flight test. Maximum speed at 4,500 meters, 715 km, 444 mph. Service ceiling, 12,770 meters practical ceiling observed at 10,000 plus meters with continued climb capability. Rate of climb at sea level 16.3 meters per second, estimated based on observed climb performance. Combat radius with drop tanks, 210 kilometers. Maximum endurance at cruise power, 5 hours. Dive speed tested, 850 km with full control authority. Maintained. Fuel consumption, 1.8 gallons per minute at cruise settings, 2.4 gallons per minute at maximum continuous power. Section 2 Comparative Analysis. P-51D, Mustang versus Focke-Wulf 190, A8 maximum speed, 715 km/h versus 653 km/h plus or 62 km/h plus 9. 5% advantage Mustang service ceiling, 12,770 versus 11,410 mm. 1360 advantage Mustang combat radius, 1 to 210 km versus 400 km to 203% advantage. Mustang rate of climb at altitude, superior above 6,000 meters. Mustang maintains power. FDI 290 degrees. High-speed dive. Mustang controllable to 850 km. FDI 290 experiences. Compressibility above 750 km/h. Advantages retained by FD 190. Roll rate at low altitude, heavier armament cannons versus machine guns. Overall assessment, Mustang superior in strategic performance metrics. FW90 retains tactical advantages, exploitable only if Mustang pilot chooses to engage in low-altitude turning combat. P-51D, Mustang versus Messerschmitt BF-109 G6, maximum speed 715 km/h versus 621 km/h plus 94 km/h plus 15% advantage. Mustang service ceiling 12,770 versus 11,515 plus 220 advantage. Mustang combat radius 1 to 10 km versus 320 km plus 78% advantage. Mustang rate of climb comparable at sea level. Mustang superior above 6,000 meters. High-speed dive, Mustang controllable to 850 km/h BF-109 experiences. Severe compressibility above 750 km/h. Advantages retained by BF-109. Sustained turn radius at low altitude due to lighter wing loading. Overall assessment, Mustang superior in all strategic categories. BF-109 advantages exist only in narrow tactical scenarios that Mustang pilot can avoid. Section 3 Tactical Implications. The P-51D Mustang represents fundamental shift in fighter design philosophy and operational capability. Analysis of tactical scenarios. Scenario A. Luftwaffe intercept of bomber formation. German fighters climb from airfield at 1,000 meters altitude to intercept bombers at 7,500 meters altitude. Climb requires approximately 20 minutes at maximum climb power. Fighters arrive at bomber altitude with fuel consumed approximately 35% of total capacity. Engine temperatures elevated, requiring power reduction within 5 to 10 minutes. Pilots fatigued from extended climb and high workload. Performance degraded at altitude, engines producing 60-70% of rated power. Meanwhile, Mustang escorts crews at 9,000 to 10,000 meters altitude. Fuel consumption minimal at cruise power, 30-35% total capacity consumed over a same 20-minute period. Engines operating well within temperature limits. Pilots rested and alert. And performance optimal at altitude, engines producing 85-90% of rated power. When German fighters attack bombers, Mustangs dive from 2,000 meters at altitude advantage. Energy advantage allows higher speed in attack. Kinetic energy from altitude converted to velocity. Multiple attack options, dive through zoom, climb or sustained pursuit. Ability to disengage and re-attack from altitude advantage if initial attack fails. German fighters cannot. Climb to engage Mustangs at their altitude, insufficient performance. Escape by diving. Mustangs follow and maintain control at higher speeds. Outrun Mustangs in level flight speed. Disadvantage 62-94 km/h depending on type. Outlast Mustangs fuel disadvantage 300-400% depending on type. Conclusion. Current Luftwaffe intercept doctrine is operationally unsustainable against P-51D equipped escort forces. Scenario B, offensive fighter sweep. Mustangs conduct offensive sweep over German territory, seeking to engage Luftwaffe fighters. German fighters scramble to intercept. Mustangs maintain altitude advantage, 9,000 to 10,000. German fighters climb to engage. At any point, Mustang formation can engage if tactical situation favors. Altitude advantage, numerical advantage, position advantage. Disengage if situation unfavorable. Climb away, run away. Dive away with speed advantage. Loiter over German airspace for 60-90 minutes, waiting for favorable engagement. German fighters cannot. Force engagement if Mustangs decline combat. Maintain patrol altitude for extended periods. Fuel limitations. Prevent Mustang operations in assigned airspace. Conclusion. Air superiority over Germany has shifted to American forces. Luftwaffe reduced to reactive posture with no ability to regain initiative. Section 4 Technical Analysis. Detailed examination of P-51D design features reveals several innovations that enable superior performance. Laminar flow wing. NACA 66 series airfoil design maintains smooth airflow over 60–70% of wing surface, reduces drag by 30 to 40% compared to conventional wing designs. Requires manufacturing tolerances of 0.005 millimeters across entire wing surface. German industry cannot achieve these tolerances at production scale. Bob Messerschmitt attempted laminar flow design in 1940, abandoned due to production difficulties. Two-stage supercharger. First stage compresses intake air. Onto second stage compresses already compressed air from first stage. Intercooler between stages reduces air temperature, increasing density. On result engine maintains sea-level power output to approximately 8,000-meter altitude. German DB605 and BMW 801 engines use single-stage superchargers. Performance falls off significantly above 6,000 millers as supercharger cannot compress thin air adequately. Fuel system design. 6 separate fuel tanks, 2 fuselage, 2 wing, 2 external drop. Automatic fuel management system balances fuel consumption to maintain center of gravity. And self-sealing tank construction. Rubber lining swells when punctured. Sealing small holes. Total capacity enables 110-kilometer combat radius or 4.5-hour endurance. German fighters carry 30–40% of Mustang's fuel capacity. High-octane fuel requirement. Packard Merlin engine requires minimum 100-octane fuel. High-octane rating prevents detonation at high manifold pressures. Enables operation at 61 inches manifold pressure, war emergency 67 inches. German synthetic fuel production limited to 87-octane maximum. Even if Germany could build Merlin-equivalent engine, lack of proper fuel prevents operation at full power. Section 5 Conclusion and Recommendations. The P-51D Mustang is the finest all-around fighter aircraft currently in operational service. It combines sufficient performance in all categories, speed climb maneuverability, and superior performance in strategic categories range endurance, high-altitude capability, reliability and ease of maintenance. Production in overwhelming numbers estimated 15,000+ aircraft by war's end. No current Luftwaffe fighter can match this combination of capabilities. Recommendations. 1. Tactical doctrine must be revised to account for Mustang capabilities. German fighters should avoid engagement when altitude or position disadvantages exist. Focus on hit-and-run attacks on bomber formations with immediate disengagement before escorts can respond. 2. Accelerate Me-262 jet fighter program. Jet propulsion offers only viable path to performance superiority over P-51D. 3. Increase emphasis on ground attack weapons for fighters. If air superiority cannot be achieved, redirect fighter resources to ground support where they can influence battlefield outcomes. 4. Prepare Luftwaffe leadership and pilots for reality that air superiority over Germany is no longer achievable with current resources and technology. Respectfully submitted. Hauptmann and Dieter Volkmann, test pilot. Engineer Ludwig Hartmann, Chief Aeronautical Engineer, Rechlin Test Facility, July 23, 1944. The report is packaged and sent to Berlin on July 23. Oberst Steinhoff includes a cover letter emphasizing the professional rigor of the evaluation and the importance of the findings. He requests expedited review and response. The response comes 5 days later, July 28, 1944. Steinhoff receives a telegram from the Reich Air Ministry. Report received and acknowledged. Findings align with field observations from Jagdgeschwader units. Priority shift accelerate Me-262 jet production. Maintain P-51D at Rechlin for comparative testing versus Me-262. Further instructions follow. Oberst Gallen Fighter Command. Steinhoff reads the telegram twice, then hands it to Dieter. They knew, Dieter says quietly. They already knew everything we reported. They needed formal documentation for the jet program justification. Perhaps, Steinhoff replies. Or perhaps they hoped our evaluation would find weaknesses that field reports missed. Either way, we have new orders. The Me-262 arrives next week. You will compare it directly to the Mustang. Dieter nods. The Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter Germany's revolutionary response to Allied air superiority. If any aircraft can match the Mustang, it should be the 262. But Dieter has questions about whether revolutionary technology alone can overcome systemic disadvantages. He will have answers soon enough. August 10, 1944, the jet arrives. The Messerschmitt Me-262A1A that arrives at Rechlin on August 10th is painted in standard Luftwaffe day fighter camouflage gray-green, upper surfaces, light blue undersides. But everything else about the aircraft is revolutionary. Two Junkers Jumo 004B turbojet engines hang in nacelles beneath swept wings. No propeller, no radial or inline piston engine. Just the pure thrust of compressed air mixed with burning fuel and expelled at high velocity. Dieter circles the jet, slowly studying its lines. The aircraft is sleek, modern, clearly designed with high-speed flight in mind. The engines are large, each producing 1,980 pounds of thrust, giving total thrust of 3,160 pounds. For comparison, the Mustang's propeller converts 1,490 horsepower into approximately 1,790 pounds of thrust at sea level. The jet has more than twice the thrust. Ludwig joins him. The engineer's eyes gleam with professional interest. Remarkable machine, Ludwig says. Maximum speed 870 kilometers per hour. That is 155 kilometers per hour faster than the Mustang. Finally, we have performance advantage. Speed is not everything, Dieter reminds him. Range, endurance, reliability. Ludwig's enthusiasm dims slightly. Ah, yes, those are concerns. The Jumo 04 engine has service life of approximately 10 to 25 hours before failure. Fuel consumption is very high. The aircraft has endurance of 60 to 90 minutes, depending on power settings. Combat radius is approximately 320 kilometers. But Dieter does the mathematics. The Mustang has combat radius of 10 kilometers and endurance of 4.5 hours. The Me-262 has less than one-third the radius and less than one-half the endurance. So the jet is faster, but cannot stay in the fight as long and cannot range as far. Correct, Ludwig admits. There are other issues as well. The jet engines are temperamental. They do not respond quickly to throttle inputs. There is several seconds lag between throttle movement and thrust change. The engines cannot tolerate rapid throttle movements. Aggressive handling causes compressor stalls and possible engine failure. And the aircraft requires long concrete runways for takeoff and landing. The engines produce little thrust at low speeds, so the takeoff roll is approximately 1,500 meters, 1,500 meters, nearly 4 times the Mustang's takeoff roll. And Me-262 airfield must have long, smooth runways, and those runways become targets for American fighters that can loiter overhead waiting for jets to take off or land when they are most vulnerable. Still, 870 km/h at maximum speed is significant. If nothing else, the Me-262 can choose whether to engage or disengage based purely on speed advantage. No Allied fighter can catch it in level flight. I will fly it tomorrow, Dieter says. Then we will see what this jet can really do. August 11, 1944. Jet flight test. The Me-262's cockpit is cramped compared to the Mustang's spacious layout, but the instrument panel is comprehensive. Dieter notes the jet-specific gauges exhaust gas temperature for each engine, RPM for each turbine, fuel flow for each engine. This is a complex machine requiring careful monitoring. The startup procedure is lengthy. Preheat the engines with an external starter cart. Bring first engine to idle RPM. Wait for temperatures to stabilize. Bring second engine to idle. Monitor carefully for any indication of compressor stall or flameout. When both engines are running smoothly, Dieter taxis toward the runway. The jet's tricycle landing gear nose wheel and 2 main wheels provides excellent ground visibility compared to tail wheel designs. But the engines respond slowly to throttle inputs, making taxi speed control difficult. Takeoff clearance received. Dieter advances both throttles smoothly forward to maximum power. The engine's whine builds to a roar. The Me-262 accelerates down Rechlin's runway, but not like the Mustang. The acceleration is gradual, building slowly as the aircraft gains speed and the engines develop full thrust. The runway disappears beneath him 500 meters, 800, 100, 400. At 1,450 meters and 180 km/h, the nose wheel lifts. At 1,500 meters and 200 km/h, the main wheels leave concrete. Math real-time moment number 5. Takeoff comparison. Me-262, takeoff roll 1, 500 meters. P-51D, takeoff roll 400 meters. FW-190. A-8 takeoff rolls 100 meters. BF-109. GWEX takeoff roll 550 meters. The jet requires 2.5 times the runway length of the Mustang and nearly 3 times that of the 109. Tactical implication. Me-262 can only operate from major airfields with long runways. Forward airstrips, damaged airfields, emergency fields, all unavailable to the jet. Gear up. The Me-262 accelerates rapidly now that drag has been reduced. 300 km, 400, 500. This is where the jet's pure thrust advantage manifests. No propeller efficiency losses, no torque to manage. Just raw thrust pushing the aircraft forward. 600 km, 700, 800. At 800 km on, Dieter is flying faster than he has ever flown in level flight, faster than the Mustang's maximum of 715 km, faster than any piston engine fighter can achieve. He continues accelerating. 850 km, 870 km, maximum speed achieved. The jet is flying at 870 kilometers per hour, 540 miles per hour at 6,000 meters altitude. This is genuinely revolutionary performance. No Allied fighter can match this speed, but speed is only one metric. Dieter begins handling evaluation. He banks left. The controls are heavy but responsive. The jet is not as maneuverable as the Mustang at this speed. It flies more like a fast bomber than a nimble fighter. He reduces speed to 600 km and tries again. Better, at moderate speeds, the Me-262 handles acceptably. Not exceptional, but adequate for a fighter. Climb test. Throttles to maximum. The jet climbs strongly 3,000 meters per minute at sea level, better than the Mustang. But as altitude increases, performance degrades. At 8,000 meters, the climb rate has fallen to 1,000 meters per minute. Service ceiling is listed as 11,450 meters. This is lower than the Mustang's 12,770 meters. The jet actually operates at lower maximum altitude than the piston engine fighter it is supposed to surpass. Dieter checks fuel. He has been airborne for 25 minutes. Fuel remaining 40% of total capacity. Math real-time moment number 6. Endurance comparison. Me-262, endurance calculation. Fuel capacity, 570 liters. Consumption at cruise, 35 liters per minute. Total endurance, 73 minutes maximum. Combat radius, 320 kilometers. 15 minutes out, 20 minutes. Combat, 15 minutes return, 23 minutes reserve. P-51D endurance calculation. Fuel capacity. 850 liters, 489 gallons with drop tanks. Consumption at cruise, 6.8 liters per minute, 1.8 gallons a minute. And total endurance, 272 minutes, 4.5 hours. Combat radius 210 kilometers, 45 minutes out, 30 minutes. Combat 45 minutes, return. 82 minutes reserve. Operational availability comparison. Me-262 can conduct one sortie per day, requires engine maintenance after 10 to 25 flight hours, complex systems prone to failure. P-51D can conduct 2 to 3 sorties per day, engine reliable for 200 plus flight hours. Simple systems, easy maintenance. The Me-262 is faster, but it is not a better fighter. Dieter lands after 45 minutes. The jet is low on fuel, the engines are hot, and he has learned what he needed to know. Ludwig meets him as he shuts down the engines. Your assessment, Herr Hauptmann. The Me-262 is the fastest fighter in the world, Dieter says. It is also the most limited. It can fly fast for short periods over short distances. The Mustang can fly almost as fast for long periods over long distances. In a war of attrition, where sustained operations matter more than peak performance, the Mustang is the superior weapon. Ludwig nods slowly. This is what I feared. We have achieved technological breakthrough, but it solves the wrong problem. We needed an aircraft that could stay in the fight longer, operate from damaged airfields, require less maintenance. Instead, we built an aircraft that is faster but more fragile and more limited than what we already have. I will include this in my report, Dieter says. Berlin needs to understand that the Me-262, while impressive, is not the answer to the Mustang. It is simply a different set of compromises. August 15, 1944. The second report. Dieter's second report is shorter than the first but equally definitive. Comparative evaluation Me-262 versus P-51D. The Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter represents revolutionary advance in propulsion technology and offers highest maximum speed of any operational fighter aircraft. However, direct comparison with P-51D Mustang reveals significant operational limitations. Advantages of Me-262. Maximum speed, 870 km versus 715 km, 45 km. Absolute advantage. Initial acceleration, superior from 300-600 km speed range. Psychological impact. Jet technology impresses and intimidates enemy pilots. Disadvantages of Me-262. Endurance 73 minutes versus 72 minutes. 73% disadvantage. On combat radius 320 km versus 210 km. 74% disadvantage. Service ceiling 11,450 versus 12,707. 1 and a 320 mile disadvantage. And takeoff roll 1, 500 mile versus 400 mile. 75% longer runway requirement. Engine reliability 10 to 25 hours versus 200 plus hours between overhauls. Maintenance complex and time-intensive versus simple and quick. Operational availability, versus 75%. Me-262 frequently grounded for maintenance. Tactical assessment. In 1 versus 1 engagement at altitude, Me-262 holds speed advantage and can choose whether to engage or disengage. However, the engagement window is narrow, approximately 15 to 20 minutes of combat time before fuel concerns force return to base. Mustang can remain on station for 60-plus minutes, attacking targets of opportunity and maintaining air superiority over extended areas. If Mustang pilot chooses to avoid Me-262 engagement, he can do so by climbing Me-262 poor climb rate above 8,000 meters, or by simply waiting for jet to reach fuel limitations and depart. Strategic assessment. The Me-262 is optimized for point defense, short-duration interception of bomber formations. It excels at this specific mission. The P-51D is optimized for air superiority, extended operations, denying enemy use of airspace. It excels at this broader mission. Germany's strategic situation in August 1944 requires air superiority capability, not point defense. Therefore, despite Me-262's impressive speed, the P-51D remains the more effective weapon for current operational requirements. Recommendation continue. Me-262 production for specialized bomber interception role. However, do not expect jet fighter to restore air superiority over Germany. The systemic advantages of Allied air forces, numerical superiority, fuel availability, pilot training logistics cannot be overcome by technological superiority in single aircraft type. Respectfully submitted, Hauptmann Dieter Volkmann, August 15, 1944. The report is sent to Berlin. Unlike the first report, this one generates immediate response. August 18, 1944. Oberst Steinhoff receives a phone call from Oberst Adolf Galland, General of Fighters. The conversation is brief and pointed. Galland thanks Steinhoff for the honest assessment, confirms that Dieter's findings align with field observations of Me-262 operations, and states that fighter production priorities will continue to emphasize the jet, but with realistic expectations about its capabilities. There is resignation in Galland's voice, the tone of a man who knows the war is lost, but must continue fighting anyway. October 15, 1944. Evacuation. By mid-October, the strategic situation has deteriorated further. Allied forces have liberated France and approached Germany's western border. Soviet forces advance from the east. The Rechlin facility, once deep inside German territory, is now within range of long-range Allied fighters conducting armed reconnaissance. The order comes on October 14th, evacuate or destroy all captured aircraft. Rechlin will be relocated further east, closer to Berlin, to facilities less vulnerable to air attack. Dieter walks to the Mustang one final time. The aircraft sits where it has sat for nearly 3 months, its olive drab paint faded by sun, the crude Luftwaffe crosses peeling at the edges. He climbs onto the wing and slides into the cockpit. Does not start the engine. Just sits hand resting on the throttle, remembering the 47 minutes in July when this machine taught him truths that 4 years of combat had not revealed. Ludwig approaches. They will destroy it tomorrow, the engineer says. Demolition charges already prepared. Cannot risk it being recaptured by advancing forces. I know, Dieter says. He reaches forward and removes the small metal plate riveted to the instrument panel. Serial number 44-13586. A piece of American manufacturing, a small token of the aircraft that changed everything. Souvenir, Ludwig asks. Evidence, Dieter replies. So in the future, when people ask whether we truly understood what we faced, I can show them this and say, yes, we knew, we tested it, we documented it, and we lost anyway. The next morning, October 16th, the Mustang is destroyed. Demolition charges reduce it to twisted metal and shattered components. The laminar flow wings, those marvels of American engineering that Dieter had admired, are blown into fragments. The Packard Merlin engine is rendered into scrap. The bubble canopy that provided perfect visibility shatters into 1,000 pieces of plexiglass. Within an hour, the remains are bulldozed into a pit and buried. Rechlin evacuates eastward. Dieter, Ludwig, Steinhoff, and the essential staff relocate to temporary facilities near Berlin. The work continues testing new variants of the Me-262, evaluating proposed piston engine fighter developments, analyzing captured Allied equipment that still trickles in from the fronts. But everyone knows it is increasingly futile. The war is lost. Only the timeline remains uncertain. May 8, 1945. War's end. Germany surrenders unconditionally on May 8, 1945. The Thousand-Year Reich has lasted 12 years. Dieter Volkmann surrenders to American forces on May 10th near Magdeburg. He is processed as a prisoner of war, assigned to a camp for Luftwaffe personnel, and within a week is interviewed by American technical intelligence officers who are compiling comprehensive assessments of German aviation programs. The interviewing officer is a major named Richards, an engineer before the war, pleasant and professional. He asked detailed questions about Recklin's captured aircraft testing program, about the evaluation procedures, about specific aircraft types. Eventually, the conversation reaches the P-51D. "You flew the Mustang we captured from you," Richards says, consulting notes. "Serial number 4413586, forced down near Aachen in July 1944. Our records show it was transported to Rechlin. We assumed it was destroyed when your facility was evacuated." "It was," Dieter confirms, "demolished October 16th to prevent recapture." "What was your assessment?" Dieter considers how to answer. He could be diplomatic, could soften the truth, could maintain some professional distance. But the war is over. There is no strategic advantage in deception anymore. Only honesty remains valuable. "The P-51D Mustang was the finest all-around fighter aircraft of the war," he says simply. Richards raises an eyebrow. "That's quite an admission." "It is an assessment, not an admission," Dieter corrects. "I evaluated 23 different Allied aircraft types between 1941 and 1945. I flew German fighters in combat for 4 years before that. The Mustang was not the fastest. Your Me-262 was faster. It was not the most maneuverable. The British Spitfire and Soviet Yak-3 turned tighter at low altitude. It did not have the heaviest armament. German fighters mounted cannons that were more destructive than your 50 caliber machine guns." He pauses, organizing his thoughts, then continues. "But the Mustang was sufficient in every category while being superior in the categories that mattered most: range, reliability, operational availability. You could produce it in overwhelming numbers. You could maintain it with minimal support. You could fly it on missions that lasted 4 hours. And most importantly, average pilots could fly it competently while expert pilots could fly it brilliantly." Richards is writing quickly. "Go on." "Germany designed fighters for expert pilots," Dieter explains. "Our aircraft required constant attention, constant management, constant skill. In peacetime, this produces superior pilots. In total war, when training time shrinks and replacement pilots arrive with 50 hours instead of 300, it produces dead pilots. And the Mustang was designed so an average pilot could focus on fighting rather than flying. Automated systems, forgiving handling, long endurance so pilots did not have to constantly monitor fuel. The philosophy was different, and in total war, your philosophy was correct." Richard stops writing and looks up. "That's a remarkable assessment from a former enemy pilot." "I am a test pilot," Dieter says. "My function is honest evaluation. The war is over. Honesty is all that remains useful." The interview continues for another hour. Dieter provides technical details about the Mustang systems, about the laminar flow wing, about the Packard Merlin engine, about the fuel management system. He explains what German engineers learned from examining the aircraft and what they could not replicate in German production. Finally, Richards asks, "If you were designing a fighter today, what would you take from the Mustang's design?" Wow. Dieter considers this carefully. "Not the specifications. Those will be obsolete in 10 years. I would take the philosophy. Designed for the mission, not for peak performance. Designed for the average pilot, not the expert. Designed for sustained operations, not short bursts of brilliance. Designed for the war you are fighting, not the war you wish you were fighting." He pauses, then adds, "We designed fighters for individual combat between skilled pilots. You designed fighters for systematic destruction of enemy air forces. Your design philosophy won because your strategic understanding was correct." Richards nods slowly. "Thank you, Hauptmann. This has been very valuable." The interview ends. Dieter is returned to the POW camp. Over the following weeks, he is interviewed several more times by different American officers, each with specific questions about Luftwaffe procedures, tactics, and technology. Each time, he provides honest, detailed answers. In June 1945, he is released from the POW camp. The Americans have no interest in prosecuting test pilots who evaluated captured equipment. Dieter returns to what remains of his home near Munich and begins the process of rebuilding life in defeated Germany. 1947-1958. Post-war life. By 1947, Germany's aviation industry is tentatively restarting under Allied supervision. Civilian aviation needs test pilots. Dieter Volkmann, with his extensive experience evaluating diverse aircraft types, finds work with a small company conducting certification flights for light aircraft. The work is mundane compared to wartime testing, but it is honest work. He flies small single-engine planes, checks their handling characteristics, verifies their performance against design specifications. It is peaceful. It is safe. It allows him to use his skills without contributing to destruction. In 1952, he receives an unexpected letter from the United States. The writer is Ludwig Hartmann, his former colleague from Rechlin. Ludwig has emigrated to America and now works for an aerospace company in California. He writes that the company is participating in early research for what will eventually become the Airbus Consortium, and they need experienced pilots to consult on design decisions. Would Dieter be interested in visiting? The answer is yes. In spring 1958, Dieter travels to the United States for the first time. It is strange to visit the country that he fought against, that defeated Germany, that produced the Mustang. But the war has been over for 13 years. Wounds, while not healed, have at least begun to close. Ludwig meets him at the airport in Los Angeles. They embrace like the old colleagues they are. War is forgotten in favor of professional respect. Over dinner that evening, Ludwig explains the project. European nations are discussing collaboration on civil airliner design. We are conducting preliminary research examining American approaches to large aircraft design and manufacturing. Your experience evaluating diverse aircraft would be valuable. What do you need from me, Madame? Dieter asks. Honest assessment, the same skill you brought to Rechlin. Tell us what the Americans do well and what we should adapt for European production. The next day, Ludwig takes Dieter to North American Aviation's facility. The company that built the Mustang now builds jets, the F-86 Sabre, for the Air Force experimental aircraft, pushing the boundaries of speed and altitude. And there on the ramp sits a restored P-51D Mustang in civilian markings. Dieter stops walking, stares at the aircraft. Memories flood back, July 20th, 1944. Rechlin Airfield, 47 minutes, that changed everything. Whose is this? He asked quietly. Belongs to one of the company's test pilots, Ludwig says. Retired Air Force. Bought it as surplus and restored it. He flies it in air shows and races. Could I meet him? Ludwig nods. I can arrange that. 2 days later, Dieter stands next to the Mustang with its owner, a man named Benjamin Thorn. He is 53 years old, weathered and friendly. A career military pilot who flew P-51s over Germany in 1944 and 1945, accumulated 22 victories, survived the war, continued flying jets in the post-war Air Force, and retired in 1955. They talk about the aircraft, about its handling characteristics, about its performance. The conversation is technical, professional, devoid of animosity. Finally, Dieter says, I flew a Mustang once, July 1944, a captured aircraft at Rechlin. Thorn's expression changes. Interest sharpens. You were the German test pilot Richards. One of our intelligence officers mentioned you in his reports. Said you gave honest assessments. It was my job. Your report said the Mustang was the finest fighter of the war. It was an accurate assessment. Thorn studies him for a moment, then grins. Want to fly her? For old time's sake. Dieter is startled. I couldn't. It is your aircraft. You flew it during the war when it was trying to kill you. Seems only fair you get to fly it during peace when it's just an airplane. Thorn gestures toward the cockpit. Go on, I'll take the back seat. This Mustang is a 2-seat trainer variant P-51D NT, modified with a second seat behind the pilot for checkout flights. Thorn climbs into the rear position, while Dieter settles into the front seat. The cockpit is familiar and strange at once. 14 years since he last sat in a Mustang cockpit. The instruments are the same, the layout identical. But the context is entirely different. You remember the startup? Thorn asks over the intercom. Yes, Dieter replies. Fuel mixture rich. Throttle cracked open 1 inch. Magnetos both. He presses the starter. The Packard Merlin coughs, catches roars to life. That same smooth, refined sound. That same sense of precision engineering. Dieter taxis, takes off, climbs into the California sky. The Mustang handles exactly as he remembers. Light controls, smooth power, forgiving characteristics. He flies for 30 minutes. does not attempt combat maneuvers or aggressive testing, just cruises feeling the aircraft remembering what it taught him 14 years ago. Finally, he returns to the airfield and lands. Smooth touchdown, straight rollout, professional to the end. After shutdown, Thorne climbs out and approaches. What do you think still the finest fighter? Dieter considers this. No, he says honestly. Jets have surpassed it. The F-86, the MiG-15, they are faster, climb better, represent the future. But for its time, for its mission, the Mustang was perfect. It did exactly what it needed to do. Thorne nods. That's what I tell people. It wasn't the fastest or the strongest or the most advanced. It was the right aircraft for the job. They shake hands. Two former enemies, now simply pilots, who respect good aircraft and honest engineering. 1973. Final reflection. Dieter Volkmann dies in 1973 at age 71. Heart failure sudden and relatively painless. A good death for a man who survived when so many did not. Among his personal effects, his children find the data plate from P-51D, serial number 4413586. The small aluminum rectangle is mounted in a simple frame with a typed note below. This plate is from the Mustang I tested at Rechlin on July 20th, 1944. I flew the aircraft for 47 minutes. In those 47 minutes, I learned more about air warfare than in 4 years of combat. The lesson victory comes not from having the best equipment, but from having good enough equipment in overwhelming numbers, supported by logistics training and doctrine that enable sustained operations. Germany had technical excellence. America had systems excellence. Systems won. D. Volkmann, 1958. His oldest son contacts Benjamin Thorne, who is still alive in California. Thorne asks if he can have the data plate to display with his Mustang. The family agrees. It seems appropriate that the piece returns to its cultural home. At an air show in 1974, Thorne's Mustang carries a small placard next to the cockpit. This aircraft honors P-51D, serial 4413586, tested by Hauptmann Dieter Volkmann, Luftwaffe test pilot, July 20, 1944. His honest assessment: the finest all-around fighter of the war. Professional respect transcends borders. Veterans from both sides read the placard. Some nod in agreement, some argue. But all recognize the truth underlying the statement. Good equipment, honestly evaluated even by enemies, serves history better than propaganda. The story of Dieter Volkmann in the captured Mustang becomes a minor footnote in aviation history. Occasionally mentioned in books about the P-51D, sometimes referenced in discussions about test pilot professionalism, rarely given extensive treatment because the conclusion is uncomfortable for narratives that prefer clear heroes and villains. Dieter was neither hero nor villain. He was a professional doing his job. He evaluated an enemy aircraft with honesty and rigor. He reported findings that his superiors did not want to hear. He survived the war and lived a quiet life afterward. The Mustang itself, the physical aircraft serial 4413586, was destroyed in October 1944 and buried in a pit near Brandenburg. The pit was covered with dirt and forgotten. In the chaos of Germany's collapse, no one marked the location. The Mustang's remains are still there somewhere under East German soil, unrecoverable and unmourned. But the lessons it taught remain. 47 minutes on July 20th, 1944. One test pilot, one captured aircraft, one honest report. 47 minutes sufficed to understand what 4 years of combat had obscured wars are won, not by superior technology alone, but by systems that can design, produce, maintain, and employ that technology at scale over sustained periods. Germany built remarkable aircraft. The Me-262 jet was genuinely revolutionary. The Me-163 rocket interceptor achieved speeds not matched for a decade. German engineering was world-class. But America built systems. Systems for training pilots, systems for producing aircraft, systems for maintaining supply chains, systems for coordinating operations across multiple theaters simultaneously. The Mustang was not America's best achievement. It was evidence of America's best achievement: the ability to design adequate weapons, produce them in overwhelming quantities, and employ them effectively through all levels of doctrine from strategic to tactical. Dieter Volkmann understood this after 47 minutes in a Mustang cockpit. German leadership understood it too late to matter. The war was lost not in 1948 when Germany surrendered, but in 1944 when captured Mustangs appeared at test facilities and honest evaluation revealed the scope of Allied superiority. The data never lies. Dieter made certain truths survived, even when Germany did not. Closing CTA. If you believe stories like Dieter Volkmann's deserve preservation, not for glory, but for truth, please subscribe to honor the memory of professionals who valued honesty over propaganda. Share this with anyone who appreciates that history's most important lessons often come from those willing to acknowledge defeat with dignity and assess opponents with respect. Next time, we will examine another captured aircraft evaluation, the Zero fighter tested by American pilots who discovered its strengths and weaknesses in 1942, intelligence that changed Pacific air combat overnight. Until then, remember, the data never lies, and neither should we.